Hard work is a scam. Have you ever worked somewhere and you've looked around and you thought, how did that person get it to that upper level of management? They don't have the smarts, they clearly can't speak very well, or they're just confused all the time with this glazed over look. Well, yes, I've experienced lots of that, and we often do in our corporate world as well. I'm going to share a story with you that's proof, in fact, that going the extra mile will usually land you in a place you don't want to be. Anyway, welcome back to the hustle, everybody. Welcome back to the grind. And let's talk about why hard work is a scam, especially in the corporate world. Now, granted, if you own the company, if you're the CEO, remember the top 2%, the people at the head table in any corporation are always looking at the shareholder value. They're looking at the stock prices. They're looking at how to bring value for shareholders. And ultimately, they do care. And they're going to do what it takes to grind to get there to the top. But for just about everybody else in the organization, you're just another tool in the toolbox. What they have purchased you for, because yes, essentially they've purchased you, essentially if you're a worker, is to do that job and do that job in its entirety. But really, is it just doing the job? No, in fact, it's much more than that. It's no longer about how you do the job. It's no longer just about doing the job. You ever notice the people quite often that are doing more work? They're coming in early, they're staying late, they're taking on extra projects. There's a meeting, and of course the manager says, hey, we've got this extra task. Who wants to lead this charge up? Who wants to take on that project? And as that person over in the corner, they're usually the ones, the go-tos, that these managers know they're going to trust. They're going to put their extra work on that person. But believe it or not, that person is not the most popular person in the room. They just know that that person is a tool that will be used a little longer. You know, it's always like you open your toolbox and you realize you have this toolbox full of screwdrivers and hand tools, but you always have that one tool that just sort of works every time. It's a little more reliable. You might have a great collection, but sometimes you just grab that tool, that, you know, that generic screwdriver with all the little like Pickwicks where they have all the little inserts. You just grab that sometimes just because when you're going out to do a job, instead of grabbing your whole tool pouch, you might just grab that little multi-purpose screwdriver. Well, that's what some of these people are. And to managers, they love that. That's value add. But they don't respect those people. They'll use those people till that person's worn out and pretty much tired and done. And then when that person either quits, leaves, or the next round of layoffs, they're gone. So the corporate world is a tough one. And there's a very tight line. You know, many years ago, I always took my job very seriously. I was that person that was coming in early, staying late, doing reports, working on a lot of projects on the weekend, and sometimes doing the extras, whatever I had to do. I was taking on committees, I was traveling for work, and I thought I was an up-and-comer. And there was this belief that I was, truly in fact. But I've seen since then that many other people who do far less, that are just that person that likes to giggle and laugh and tell that little joke, that, you know, tongue-in-cheek joke, and comes in late. You know, they come in late, they sometimes usually leave early and quite often only show up 2 or 3 days of the week. And for some reason, you often scratch your head and wonder, how is it that they're loved so much? How is it that they're getting these extra opportunities? I've seen that, I live that. But beyond that story, actually, I have another story. Many years ago in my team, okay, we had this program where essentially if you were on sort of a designate team during the holidays, you were looking after emergent conditions, situations that could come up, and they usually had a couple people assigned for that. Okay, great. I was on vacation. I was out of town, actually about an hour out of town, at a little cabin at Christmas time. We were chilling out, family, wife, kids, and lo and behold, Christmas Eve, I get this phone call from one of the people on the team. One that you can make an argument was very incompetent and always leaned on all of their other team members for just about everything because they never really quite knew what it took. And sometimes that's another personality in the corporate game that you'll often find out too, which we'll expand on another day. But there's always that person that is just good at networking, knows how to say the right things, knows who to go to, and quite often those are the people they just lean on everybody else to actually help pull them along. Well, anyhow, this was just such person, and they called me up. I wasn't even on this team. I wasn't on that designate team, and rather I was just at home on vacation, enjoying what was, going into the vacation or the holiday season with the family, and I get this phone call. They're begging, they're pleading, they're saying, we have this real emergent condition situation here at work, and they called me for a little assistance. I said, well, I'm on holidays. He said, well, we got to get this figured out. This is a serious issue. Okay, I'm like, well, I mean, here, me being me, that person at that time, several years ago, that would take my work home. I was that person that lived it. I was that person that was going above and beyond. So lo and behold, I get in my car. I tell my wife, I said, look, I've got to go to work. I just got to go, probably be a couple hours, an hour there, hour back, and maybe an hour or two on site. I should be back maybe in a few hours. I just got to get this problem sorted out. So I jump in my car. I race into work. Lo and behold, I find out 2 weeks later, I got a speeding ticket by a photo radar because I was in a rush to get to work on this holiday time, and I realize now in retrospect, of course, that was a mistake and nobody should ever speed. And certainly nothing is in that critical unless it's emergent life and death, in which case this certainly wasn't. But here I was racing into work, get there, find the problem. We have the conversation. I pulled together the meeting. We grabbed the team. We grabbed some extra help. We basically had a great collaborative meeting, put together a plan, had everybody together, had all of the idea laid out, and it seemed like we pretty much had everything ready to go. So we ordered in lunch. We said, look, okay, let's just have a quick lunch. After lunch, you know what? You guys all have it ready to go. Everybody was on the same page. We had a plan. It was all sorted out. Boom. Okay, we grabbed a quick lunch and we ordered that in. And then I said, okay, after lunch, you guys are getting to it. I'm out of here. So I went home. It was Christmas time. I wasn't on the clock. I certainly wasn't being paid. But I came in, took one for the team, thought, you know what? On my dime, I'm coming in. I won't charge for it because that's just how it works. And usually on those roles as a salary job, you don't charge hourly. You just sort of eat it and come in. So that's part of the game. So I came in, went back home. Next week, after vacation holidays were over, my manager calls me in, said, hey, Mark, I understand that you had this situation. Okay, well, it's great to hear that we got it sorted. Oh, and by the way, there's some team members of yours that were saying you seemed like you were in a rush to get out of there. So ultimately, this turned into me being helpful, trying to help out the team, to being flipped the script and told that somehow I was inadequate and I wasn't there to support the team. And yet, clearly I was. I didn't even have to go in. I wasn't part of the call out schedule. I wasn't certainly part of any of that. And I didn't even have to answer the phone realistically. All of the players were in the place. And though that's part of that corporate structure, everybody, all the team members were in place to support any of these events. But I went in anyway, in good faith, to try to support the team. After I got that ramrod, I literally realized at that point that what did I do this extra for? I got a speeding ticket. I got crap from the boss. And now lo and behold, I got these team members that are trying to take me out at the knees. Well, I learned a lot of hard lessons just in that one event alone. One thing for sure, I realized that hard work is a scam. So taking on those extra projects, taking one for the team, doing those things on the weekend, absolutely pointless. Now, I've seen people that come in a couple days a week, and they're always well loved. And it's funny because quite often, you wonder how in the heck they're getting these special treatments, these special projects, these things that are nice gravy train projects, but they're never here. I put two and two together and I realized quite often the people that are getting those are the people that know how to navigate. They're the people that know how to say those tongue-in-cheek jokes. They're those people that, crack little jokes, make a laugh, talk, be funny, and kind of do a little poke and prod and be all cheery. And it's really a personality game. It's a personality game with the understanding that you were hired for a specific task. See, as soon as you deviate, even if you think you're doing something really special, you're taking one for the team, you're doing extra, you're moving above and beyond, you're moving mountains, guess what? It's a corporate game. You're just a cog. See, that wheel has 100 cogs, 1,000 cogs on it. You were hired for that one cog. You start trying to do your cog and then the next one and then the next one, well, guess what? You're going above and beyond, which sounds good to you. And I think inherently it seems like a good thing to do if you think you're trying to make yourself valuable to the organization, but that's not value. You're doing somebody else's job and now you're deviating. And instead of them looking at it like a positive, like you're trying to do more, they're looking at it like they'll turn the script on you again and say, well, if you're spending time doing these other tasks, which aren't strictly your defined tasks that you were hired for, then you're probably not doing your job in its entirety. And they'll turn that on you and make it seem like you're not doing your job. Hence, it now becomes a performance conversation. So the whole game, it's a game of song and dance and figuring out, navigating the network and, being the right player, being in the room when the right players are, we saw that time and time again, seeing some of the networking, some of the gamesmanship that was going on by those people that just knew how to play. They just knew how to play. They knew how to say the right things. They knew, in many cases, how to use their own clout. They had clout by association. Hey, I know so-and-so. What? And because it was such a popular conversation, it usually was an icebreaker that got them in the door and got them immediately popular. It's just a game. But what you got to realize is there's a way through this. And unfortunately, as you get older, you realize, you know what? As you're working harder, you're working older, you're thinking, I've got to make myself relevant. I'm in my 40s, 50s, maybe in your 60s, still fighting for this corporate position. You may not realize directly, but your days are numbered. Ageism is real. And you're seeing people fall around you. The last layoff you saw, 20, 30% of the people that left were performance-related issues, quite obviously. But if you look at it, probably half of the people that left weren't performance. They were all up in age. And so quite often, ageism is a major factor for people getting their walking papers. Now, was that a factor for me? I believe ageism was the biggest issue. But the worst part is being that sucker that's always putting your hand up, doing those extra tasks. That's not going to get you. That might buy you a few extra months, might buy you an extra year or two, if they can truly leverage you and run you deep into the ground and put their boots onto your forehead while you're taking on these extra tasks. These are the things that they know that they can count on you to be that person that's going to do 130, 140%. Your local low-end management, your immediate supervisor will love that. But at a high level, the organization doesn't expect that. They don't want that. Rather, they just want you to sit there, do your job, and do just your job in its entirety. And that's it. But on top of it, what they don't tell you is you have to look at networking. The networking game is such a big part of the corporate game. And working harder simply just doesn't get you anywhere. Like they say, it's not who you know, it's how you... But there is some great news in all of this. If you are still happen to be surviving the corporate game, just know this. You still have a chance to hold on. Learn that networking. Be smile, be chummy. Don't be that sucker that's taking on that extra task. Just know who you've got to talk to. Be a presence. Be in their face. And you can hold on to your job a little bit longer. That's if you want to keep working. Because after my years of understanding that it's really working smarter, not harder, and being that person that's going to do all the extra jobs is not going to get you anywhere. Rather, it's a popularity contest. That's not very appealing. I've always grown up in an environment where I truly believe, you put in a hard day's work and you get a solid day's pay. But it doesn't seem to work like that anymore. And in the corporate game, it really is more about strategy, who you know, and how to get it done. And I know there's going to be some contrary to this conversation. Certainly, I'd love to hear your comments down below. I'd like to hear your take on what you truly believe it takes to survive in the corporate game. Yes, okay, sure, you have the degree, you say all the right things, you network, you move up your snakes and ladders. But I've also seen so many people doing those right things, it just never makes it. Obviously, there's that X factor, and it's really more about navigating that personality contest. Definitely drop a line. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Bye-bye.